Hello everyone, this is Carla and welcome back to the studio and thank you for joining me for another episode of Throwback Thursday. So for this Thursday, we are going to start doing some Valentine projects. So the stamp set I will be featuring is Love Cats. This does not have any coordinating dies or punches with it. So we're going to be using some for both of our projects. So for my first card, let me bring in my cardstock pieces. I have a piece of basic white thick. This measures 11 by 4 1/4 and it's scored at 5 1/2. I have a piece of the Simply Marbleous DSP. This measures 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And here's a reference sheet that I created for that pack of paper. So one side you have like a satin design to it, and the other side is in marble. And these are the 6 colors that came into the ink. I can't talk. Sorry, that came in that pack. Okay, so then I have a 5 by 4 inch scrap of basic white. I have a 2 1/4 by 2 inch scrap of basic white, and then I have a 1 1/2 by 1 inch scrap of Flirty Flamingo. So to start off, I'm going to bring in my bone folder since I forgot to grab it before we started, and I'm going to fold and burnish my card base. Okay, and then I'm going to take my piece of DSP and I'm going to bring in my glue and I'm going to add some to the back of this. Now this is the Tombow multi-purpose glue that we sell in our annual catalog. I just put it in a fine tip bottle that I got on Amazon, and I have linked it in the description of the video. So I'm going to take this piece of DSP and I'm going to center it on my card base. Now there isn't much of a border, so there's just a little one. Okay. And then I'm going to set that aside. Then for my larger piece of cardstock, the colors of ink that I'm going to use is my Jet Black StazOn ink. This is a solvent ink. And I will also be using Flirty Flamingo. So I'm going to take, actually let me close up my glue. Let's do that first. Okay, and I'm going to bring in the stamp that has the cat just hanging from a line, this one right here. And then I'm also going to bring in the greeting that says, I love hanging out with you. So we open up my ink pad. I'm going to ink up my stamp really well. And I just re-inked this pad. So it's got lots of ink on it, so we should get a really nice, crisp, deep black image. I'm using StazOn rather than the Memento because the StazOn is more of an opaque type black, whereas the Memento, it doesn't give you that really crisp black. So I'm going to stamp this on my cardstock. I'm just going to hold it for a moment so we get the ink to transfer really well. Okay, we'll set that aside. And just like as a little tidbit, after you use StazOn, usually you would have to use the StazOn cleaner to clean it. But if you bring in your Stampin' Scrub and you clean it like right away, the ink will come off of it. But if it's sat for a bit, yeah, you'll probably need as you can see, it came out pretty clean. But if you had let it sat, then you would probably need your StazOn cleaner. Okay, so for this piece, I'm going to die cut it with this die, and this comes from the rectangle stitch dies. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside because all die cutting is going to be done at the same time. And then for this piece, I'm going to bring in my Flirty Flamingo ink. Ooh, squeaky. And I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to stamp this in the middle. Okay, and it was upside down. So for this, I'm going to die cut with this die, and this is also from the rectangle stitch dies. Let's close this up because we're done with our stamping. And then for this little Flirty Flamingo piece, I'm going to use this punch, this little heart punch. This was part of the Itty Bitty Accents punch pack. So the other two punches that came with this is a 4-clover flower and a star. So I'm just going to punch out one of these hearts out of the Flirty Flamingo. Okay, so I am going to bring in my die cut machine. I'm going to die cut these two pieces, and I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. So for the cat, I am going to bring in my dimensionals. And I'm going to add some to the back of this. And we'll put 2 in the middle so it doesn't sag. Okay. And then I'm going to add some to the back of the greeting piece as well. Okay, and then for the little heart, I'm going to bring in my mini dimensionals. And my take your pick tool, and I'm going to add a small one to the back of my heart. Okay. And then let's just move that out of the way. And then for this piece, I'm going to center this on my card front, like so. Okay, and then the heart, I'm going to add right over the stamped one. And then the greeting, I'm going to kind of put this at an angle, like so. And then I'm going to bring in my Wink of Stella. And I'm going to add some onto this heart. Just add a little bit of sparkle to the card, in addition to the rhinestones that we'll put on it as well. Okay. And then I'm going to bring in some, now this is kind of old. This is the Blushing Bride Baker's Twine. This is from back when they had our twines and stuff on cards rather on spools. So I'm going to take some of this and I'm going to wrap it around towards the top of my card. I'm going to wrap this twice, like so. Okay. And hopefully it'll cooperate and it'll work with me instead of against me. Okay. And kind of move this up a little bit. And then I'm actually going to cut some of this. Okay. And then I'm going to kind of wrap this around. And I'm going to tie a knot. Move this down just a little bit. Move this down a little bit. Now, one of the little tricks that I kind of learned from Julie D'Amadio is bring in your reverse locking tweezers, and it'll be your extra hand so you can tie a nice tight knot. Okay, and then I'll just remove that. Okay, and then I'm going to slide this over just a little bit. Okay, now this is going to be the real test. Trying to tie a bow. So I struggled earlier doing this. So I'm going to try the bunny ear technique where you just create 2 loops. And you just kind of tie them together. And let's see how that came out. Bows aren't really hard. It's just with the baker's twine, for some reason, it really likes to twist up on you. Like how this loop is. I'm going to kind of hold that down. And I'm going to pull. We don't need a really big loop bow. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this end. Just going to kind of put my finger over that knot and pull, so then that way the loops don't get all twisted up. Okay, so now I'm going to trim the tail. So I'm going to leave like a long tail on this. So I'm going to snip it all the way down here. And one of the things I like to do, just like curling ribbon, I'm going to put my thumb over the knot, and I'm going to come in with my bone folder, and I'm just going to run it along the tails, and that way it gives it a little bit of some curl to it. So I'm going to bring in my iridescent rhinestone basic jewels. These things coordinate with like everything, because these, you can see through these, so basically whatever you put them on, it's going to take on the color of the paper that's behind it. So I'm going to add some of these on here. So I'm going to move this up just a little bit. And I'm going to add one up here. And then I'm going to take one of the smaller ones, and I'm going to add that right over here. Okay, so that is our first card. On to our second. Okay, so for my second card, I have a piece of real red. This measures 8.5 by 5.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4. I have a 5 1/4 by 4-inch piece of bubble bath. I have a 3 1/4 by 3 1/4 inch scrap of real red, a 3 by 3 scrap piece of basic white, I have a 3 1/4 by 1 1/2 inch scrap of real red and a 2 1/4 by 2 inch scrap of basic white. So I'm going to start off like I do with all my other cards, and I'm going to fold and burnish my card base, and I'm going to set that aside. Then for this piece of bubble bath, so here's the extra things that I'm going to be using. So for my bubble bath piece, I'm going to emboss it with this embossing folder, and it comes from the Basics 3D embossing folders, and this can be found in our online exclusives. So I'm going to set that aside. And then for my piece of real red, I am going to die cut that with this larger stitch square. And this die comes from the Stylish Shapes dies, and this is in our annual catalog. And then also on this piece here, I'm going to stamp it first, and then I'll die cut it with the next smallest stitch square from that same set of dies. And then for these pieces, so for this piece of real red, I'm going to use our double oval punch, and this is in our annual catalog, and I'm going to punch out the scalloped oval, and then I'm going to stamp my greeting that says head over heels about you on this piece of white, and then I'll punch it with the solid oval punch. Okay, so I'm going to stamp my stuff first. And so I'm going to bring in my bubble bath ink, and I'm going to stamp the greeting on my smaller piece of basic white. And I'm going to stamp that right in the center. Like so. And we're done with this. Okay, and then let's bring in our punch really quick. So I'm going to punch out my scallop. Set that aside. And then I'm going to bring in this piece, and I'm going to have to trim it some on the bottom. So let me bring in my snips that I use for cutting paper, and I'm going to trim some from the bottom of this. Okay, and then I'll put it in my punch, and I'm just going to get it lined up. Get it where it's even in there. And I'll punch that out. Okay, so we're done punching. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my liquid glue. I'm going to add some to the back of this. And I will center it onto my scalloped oval. Like so. Press that down. Okay, and let me close up my glue. Okay, and we'll set that aside. Now for this piece, I'm going to bring in my StazOn Jet Black ink again. And I'm going to bring in this cute stamp. And I am going to ink it up. Well, actually, let me turn it around and ink it up so I could see it better. I'm going to ink this up really well. Okay. And then when I stamp this, I want to be, I want to be closer to the bottom right hand corner. Because I'm going to line this die up right along that edge of the cat. Okay. Set that aside, and actually, just like I did before while that dries before we die cut it, I'm going to go ahead and clean the stamp. And there we got all the stays on ink off of it. And while I'm at it, let me go ahead and do a quick clean with this one. Okay. So for my next part, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to die cut. So I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. So I'm going to take my bubble bath piece, I'm going to bring in my liquid glue, and I'm going to add some to the back of this. Okay, and then I'm going to center this on my card base. So I really like these 3D, the basics 3D embossing folders. They're really versatile and you can use them for so many different theme projects. I mean, I've used this embossing folder quite a bit in my videos so far. Okay, and then for these two pieces, I'm going to adhere my cat onto the real red stitched square. So I'm going to center this. Try and get it centered. Okay. Press that down. Okay. Then I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Write markers. This one is the Lemon Lime Twist, and this is part of the Brights collection of markers. And this is Bubble Bath, and this is part of the Settles. So with my Bubble Bath, I'm going to color in this heart. And then his little nose. He's just so stinking cute. And then I'm going to bring in my Lemon Lime Twist. And I'm going to color in his eyes. Okay. Then I'm going to bring in my dimensionals. I'm going to add these to the back. Okay, bring in my card base. And I'm going to center this like so. And then I'm going to add some glue to the back, this punched out piece. And I'm going to add that right over the corner here. Let that sit for a moment. Now close up my glue. And then I'm going to bring in my iridescent rhinestones, and I'm going to bring in my Wink of Stella. And I'm just going to add some of the Wink of Stella onto this heart. Okay. And then bring in my Take Your Pick tool. And then I'm going to take 3 of these larger ones. And I'm going to add them to my card. So there is our second card. So let me move this out of the way and let me bring in the other card that we made. So our first card was this one here. Use some DSP for our backdrop. Really cute. And then we have this one that we just did using the red, the real red, and the bubble bath. So I hope you like these cards that we made for this episode of Throwback Thursday. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me in not only growing my channel, but also helps me in building my Stampin' Up! Business. So I thank you for joining me, and until next time, have a blessed one. Bye-bye.